He was a billionaire with a secret. She was a homeless girl trying to stay warm in the rain. When he knelt beside her and asked, "Will you pretend to be my fiancée?" She thought it was a cruel joke. But what started as a lie soon became the one thing neither of them expected, real. And when his aristocratic mother laid eyes on the girl from the streets, her reaction changed everything. Welcome to Storytelling and Beyond, where we bring you unforgettable stories of impossible love, raw transformation, and redemption from unexpected places. If this story touches you, inspires you, or takes your breath away, subscribe now and ring the bell so you never miss what comes next. It was the kind of New York rain that didn't crash, it whispered. Thin, cold, and steady, it slicked down glass towers and soaked forgotten corners of the city without mercy. Claire sat cross-legged under the faded green awning of a high-end cafe on Fifth Avenue. Her backpack was wedged tightly against her chest, her head down, her hair dripping. She hadn't begged. She never did. But the cup of coffee clutched in her hands was the first warm thing she'd held in 3 days. Behind her, safe inside the cafe's golden glow, the rich murmured over lattes and leather menus. No one looked outside. No one, except him. Lucas Brandon, 29, heir to Brandon Hotels, sat near the window, untouched espresso growing cold. He had boardrooms at his feet and trust funds at his fingertips. But right now, he wasn't looking at business plans. He was staring at a girl who hadn't spoken to a soul all day. When their eyes met, just for a second Claire expected the usual, pity, or worse, guilt. But he didn't look away. He stood up, left his table, and stepped into the drizzle like it meant nothing. He crouched beside her with a croissant in one hand and a steaming cup of tea in the other. Claire flinched. "What is this?" she said warily. "I need a favor," Lucas said. "A strange one." She narrowed her eyes. "I don't do drugs or run errands." "I need you to pretend," he said softly, "to be my fiancée. Just for one weekend." Claire's mouth dropped open slightly. She stared at him, baffled. "Excuse me?" "My mother is flying in from London," he continued. "She's expecting to meet the woman I'm in love with. A lie I told months ago to get her off my back. And now I need someone real to pull it off." Claire stared at the croissant. At his pressed coat. "And why me?" Lucas studied her. "Because you won't try to impress her. And because I think you're the only person I've met this week who didn't want anything from me." She looked around to see if someone was filming. "So I just smile and nod while you parade me around? You'll have clothes. A room. Food. You'll be safe. Paid, if you want." She wanted to say no. She should have said no. But her stomach growled. Her body shivered. And when she looked back at his eyes, she saw desperation that matched her own. "Only for the weekend," she muttered. Lucas nodded once. "Perfect. She lands tomorrow." And as the rain whispered on, the richest man in the cafe walked back inside with a homeless girl who was about to change his life. Claire had never seen a bathroom like this in her life. Marble floors that glistened like ice, a tub that could easily fit 4 people, and folded towels so white and soft she was afraid to touch them. The sweet Lucas brought her to overlooked Central Park, with windows stretching from floor to ceiling. Everything smelled like eucalyptus and money. Her fingers trembled as she ran hot water into the tub. She soaked for over an hour, scrubbing weeks of street off her skin until it turned pink. When she stepped out, there was a silk robe folded on the counter and a tray waiting outside her door, grilled salmon, a warm baguette, and a small chocolate tart. It felt like a dream, a stolen one. A knock at the door broke the moment. A woman with sharp eyes, a black clipboard, and a measuring tape entered. "Stylist," she said briskly. "You're Claire now. Let's make sure you look the part." 3 hours later, Claire stood in front of a tall mirror wearing a soft blush gown with pearl buttons at the collar and delicate embroidery down the sleeves. Her hair had been trimmed, her skin gently treated. A makeup artist had highlighted her green eyes, giving her a quiet, understated elegance. She looked like someone else. But not quite. Because deep inside, the street never leaves. Lucas walked in, adjusting his cufflinks. He paused when he saw her. "You clean up well," he said with a smirk. Claire raised an eyebrow. "Don't push it." He chuckled. "You look convincing." She crossed her arms. "What do I need to know before I walk into this lion's den?" He straightened, suddenly serious. "Her name is Margaret. Margaret Brandon. She's powerful, intelligent, and terrifying in heels. She expects manners, charm, and a little bit of pedigree." Claire smirked. "I've got 2 out of 3. He handed her a small binder. "Read it on the way. It's everything about your fake life, where we met, your made-up art background, favorite wine, how I proposed on the Amalfi Coast." She flipped through the pages, scoffing. "You really planned this out." "I plan everything," he said. "Except who I'd actually find to play the part." Later that evening, they pulled up to the Brandon family estate, more castle than home. Golden lights shimmered across its long windows, and a valet opened Claire's door like she belonged there. Her arm looped in Lucas's. They walked through towering marble arches into a chandelier-lit hall where elegance dripped from the walls like honey. Whispers started the moment they entered. Dozens of eyes turned toward them, curious, surprised, skeptical. But none more piercing than those of Margaret Brandon. She stood near the grand piano in a sapphire gown, posture perfect, fingers clutching a champagne flute. Her gaze fixed on Claire like a laser. She took one graceful step forward. "So," she said, her British accent cutting through the murmurs, "this is the woman who's captured my son's heart?" Lucas smiled, drawing Claire gently closer. "Mother, this is Claire. The woman I'm going to marry." Margaret's expression didn't falter. She nodded slowly but coldly. "How charming." She turned to Claire with a chilling smile. "We must talk. Alone." Claire's pulse quickened, but Lucas gave her hand a firm squeeze. "She can hear whatever you have to say, Mother," he said calmly. "She's not just my fiancée. She's family now." Margaret's eyes didn't blink. But something flickered, surprise, perhaps. Or warning. Claire stood taller. She was still wearing borrowed skin, but suddenly, her spine was her own. Margaret gave a slight, slow nod. "Very well. Then let's eat." As they moved toward the dining room, Claire knew one thing for certain: this wasn't going to be just a weekend. This was a test. And somewhere in that golden palace, the truth was waiting to crawl out. Dinner was an orchestra of tension. Crystal clinked. Silver scraped porcelain. Conversations danced around art galleries, European auctions, and real estate acquisitions, subjects Claire had read about only hours ago in the binder. She responded carefully, mimicking elegance, using the words Lucas had rehearsed with her in the car. But Margaret Brandon wasn't fooled. She sat at the head of the long mahogany table, watching Claire with the detached precision of a chessmaster studying a suspicious move. Her questions came like gentle taps, polite, but calculated. "You said you studied art in Paris?" Claire nodded. "At the École des Beaux-Arts." Margaret took a sip of wine, casually. "Under which professor?" Claire hesitated, recalling the notes. "Professor Lemierre." Margaret placed her glass down with a quiet click. "Interesting. He retired nearly 8 years ago." The room paused. Claire felt her throat tighten. Lucas interjected quickly. "She studied independently after that. With a few modernists in Bordeaux." Margaret smiled thinly. "How unconventional." After dinner, the guests trickled into the ballroom for soft jazz and quiet chatter. Claire slipped out to the garden, needing space, air, something that wasn't dripping in gold. She found a quiet stone bench near the rose bushes and sat with her hands trembling in her lap. She didn't belong here. Every chandelier, every forced smile, every accusing glance confirmed it. This had been a mistake. She should have said no. Then a voice from the shadows whispered, "Claire?" She looked up. A thin girl in a thrift store coat stood at the edge of the garden path. Her face was familiar, too familiar. "Lena?" Claire said, stunned. Lena nodded, stepping closer. Her hair was shorter, her eyes sunken, but it was her. They'd shared the same shelter 2 winters ago. What are you doing here?" Claire whispered. "I came with the catering crew," Lena said softly. "But, what are you doing here?" Before Claire could respond, the crunch of heels on gravel snapped their attention to the side. Margaret Brandon stepped into view, her gaze landing on both girls. She froze. Her face was a mask frozen between confusion and dawning comprehension. "You know each other," she said flatly. Lena took a cautious step back. I was just leaving." But Margaret's sharp gaze returned to Claire. "Who are you?" she asked quietly, dangerously. "What are you doing in my home?" Claire's lips parted, but no words came out. Lucas arrived just then, breathless. He had seen the garden lights from the ballroom and suspected something was wrong. "Mother," he started. Margaret held up a hand. "She's not who you said she was. She's not from Paris. She's from the streets." Lucas stepped between them. "Yes," he said, voice strong. "She is." Margaret looked furious. "You lied to me?" "I lied to protect her," Lucas replied. "Because I knew exactly how you'd react. And you didn't disappoint." Margaret's eyes filled with restrained fury. But as she looked at Claire, really looked at her, something shifted. Her gaze softened for a moment. "She reminds me of me," she said under her breath. "Before I married your father. Before I had to dress and smile and crush my voice to survive all this." The words hung in the cool night air like fog. Then, with a slight shake of her head, Margaret turned and walked away, leaving only silence behind her. Claire looked at Lucas. "What was that?" He stared after his mother. "Something I never thought I'd hear." Claire let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Maybe the lie had cracked. But so had something else, something old and hidden in Margaret's world of stone. The next morning was quiet. Claire stood by the balcony, sipping coffee from a china cup she held with both hands, as if it might shatter if she didn't. The view stretched across the misty gardens of the Brandon estate, trimmed hedges in geometric perfection, fountains whispering in the wind. But none of it felt real. Not to her. She had stayed. She didn't know why. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was Lucas's hand on her shoulder last night after his mother walked away, saying, "You don't have to run anymore." Maybe it was because, for the first time in years, she didn't want to run. Lucas appeared behind her, freshly shaven, still in his robe. "She wants to see you," he said gently. Claire turned, eyebrows raised. "Your mother?" He nodded. "She's in the solarium." Claire followed the maze of corridors until she reached a bright room filled with sunlight and the smell of citrus trees. Margaret Brandon sat at a white wrought iron table with 2 cups of tea already poured. She looked out the window as Claire entered but didn't say anything for a long moment. Finally, she gestured to the chair across from her. "Sit." Claire obeyed cautiously. Margaret studied her face. Not like last night, with suspicion, but with a distant kind of curiosity. "I used to sleep in a church basement in Edinburgh," Margaret said suddenly. "Before anyone ever called me Mrs. Brandon." Claire blinked. "I lied my way into finishing school. Pretended to be someone I wasn't so I wouldn't be someone people forgot." Claire said nothing. "You're not from Paris," Margaret continued. "You didn't study art in Europe. You don't come from wealth." "No," Claire admitted softly. "But you have presence," Margaret said. "Strength. My son may have brought you here under false pretenses, but that doesn't make your dignity any less real." Claire met her eyes. "I didn't mean to lie. I didn't think anyone would ever give me a chance to be someone unless I pretended first." Margaret exhaled slowly. "We're all pretending, Claire. The ones who say they aren't. They're just better at it. They sat in silence for a while, the air heavy with things unsaid but understood. I can't speak for society, Margaret said at last, but in this house, my son's choices are his own. You've endured far worse than I can imagine. And still, you managed to make this place a little more honest. Claire's voice cracked. You don't hate me? Margaret looked at her, eyes softer than before. I admire you. Later that day, Claire packed the dress into the garment bag, folded the robe, and set the borrowed heels beside the bed. But when she stepped into the hallway, she found Lucas leaning against the wall. I thought you left, he said. I was going to. He smiled. And? I don't want to go back to sleeping on benches, she said, but I also don't want to be someone's project. You're not, he replied. But if you ever want to stay, stay as you. No pretending. Claire studied him for a long moment. And if I fall apart sometimes? He stepped forward and said quietly, then I'll sit with you until the pieces stop shaking. She didn't say yes. Not with words. But when she reached for his hand, it was answer enough. In the weeks that followed, Claire stayed, not because she was paid, but because she was wanted. And Lucas wasn't the rich boy trying to fix her anymore. He was the man who chose her, fully aware of where she came from. Margaret invited Claire to dinners. Then to garden luncheons. Eventually, she handed her a small velvet box, not with a ring, but with an heirloom brooch. A symbol, perhaps, that the girl who once said nothing was now part of something she never expected. And when Claire stood again beneath that cafe awning a month later, not because she had to, but because she saw another girl sitting there cold and invisible, she handed her a croissant and a cup of tea. People don't stay lost forever, she said with a soft smile. Sometimes they're just waiting for someone to see them. Thank you for watching. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to Storytelling and Beyond and ring the bell for more unforgettable tales of courage, healing, and the quiet power of being seen.